Hello. So Tesla had a pretty rough week last week. We can start off with the good. They expect Q4 to be profitable. Not quite as profitable as Q3, but back-to-back profitable quarters. I think that's the first time in the company's history, so that's good news. They also expect Q1 of this year to be profitable, so that's more good news. But over the week, the stock price tumbled about $40, maybe closer to $45. This is partly due to an email Tesla sent out saying that to continue to push forward with their goal of accelerating the transition to sustainable energy, they would have to be better at being consistently profitable. And to do that, they have to make some cuts. And we'll start with the ones that will directly affect a lot of their employees. So in the letter, they say they're going to be laying off 7% of their workforce. They did grow by 30% in 2018, but a lot of that was just to get the Model 3 production to where it needed to be. They were having some issues with their machines, and an easy fix to that was to just have more human beings working on the lines. And maybe this means they've gotten that straightened out. And that's probably why the majority of the cuts are said to be in manufacturing. In the email, Elon described 2018 as their most challenging and their most successful year. He said their cars and energy products are too expensive and need to be more competitive with fossil fuels. And I think as far as sustaining the company, if you're just selling Model S, Model X, and highly optioned Model 3s, I think they could have done that and been fine. But that's not their goal. Their goal is to push to the standard range Model 3. And they can't even build that car until they get costs down. One way to get the cost down is to simply build the cars faster, but they're now going to be trying to build the cars faster with fewer people, which also reduces cost, but it also makes it more complicated to build those cars faster. Making this more complicated, it was only a few months ago where they said they wanted to increase the amount of service centers, because right now they're pumping out more cars than they ever have. So maybe even though they have to lay off people now, they'll be able to do some more hiring later in the year. I guess the one ray of sunshine I can pump on this whole situation is Tesla gets like thousands of applications for each job they post. So I like to think that the people they hire are the best and the brightest. So I'm hoping that none of the people who do get laid off have a hard time bouncing back. Now, as a reminder, you can still get free supercharging for 6 months with a referral. That is a little more valuable now since they've now increased the price of supercharging. They've also made the pricing a little more complex. The supercharger rate used to be the same throughout any given state. Now it's based on specific supercharger locations. So the supercharging rate in Houston isn't necessarily going to be the same as the one in Dallas, and the same as Orlando and Miami, or Los Angeles and San Francisco. It's all based on specific locations. And this makes sense to me because even here in Baton Rouge, depending on what city you live in, that determines which electricity provider you have. This is the second time they've increased the supercharging prices in a few months. You can look on the map in your car and figure out the prices of the superchargers just by tapping on the icon. I can't do it since I have free supercharging. It only shows me the price of the idle fees. So maybe they'll update the website for the specific locations, or maybe someone out there is going to compile all the numbers and have it easier for people to access. Right now, it's not as easy as knowing what the price was for the entire state. But the website does show you your savings if you make a route between 2 points. And it also shows you the national average, which is 31 cents per kilowatt hour or 28 cents per minute when charging over 60 kilowatts. From the numbers I compiled from a few months ago, the average price was 23 cents per kilowatt hour or 22 cents per minute when charging over 60 kilowatts. Those numbers are in line with the Electrify America charging rates, which I will be doing a video on pretty soon. Their rates range from 30 to 35 cents per minute plus $1, and there's a 40 cents per minute idle fee. What about comparing it to gas? Gas prices are really low right now. Locally, they're about $1.90 in the local Baton Rouge area. Nationally, about $2.28. So if you can average 295 watt hours per mile, like I do, using the Supercharger network at 31 cents per kilowatt hour will cost you $45.73. In a gas car that gets 30 miles per gallon, it will cost $38 to go 500 miles if the gas price is using a national average of $2.28. So it actually costs about $7 more. Now the Model 3 is a little more efficient. A lot of people are saying they're getting around 250 watt-hours per mile, but even at 250 watt-hours per mile, it would still cost 75 cents more to travel 500 miles than a car that got 30 miles per gallon. But all that being said, we don't know when the gas prices are just going to skyrocket. Electricity prices are pretty stable. They can go up, they can go down a little bit, but electricity prices don't move as much as gas prices do. I think as long as they can be upfront with the supercharging rates, I don't really have a problem with this. But it is tough for people who do rely on the superchargers for their daily charging. I personally wouldn't recommend an electric car to anyone who couldn't charge it at home. The convenience of being able to just plug the car in when I get home and not have to worry about it is greater than even being able to go to the supercharger for free, like I have free supercharging. I've heard people say this is to discourage people from overusing the supercharging. I don't really think it's about that. When they first announced the paid charging rates, it's really not that much more than the electricity rates that Tesla's paying at those superchargers. And if the paid supercharging is supposed to help build out the supercharging network, they're going to have to sell a lot more vehicles that have paid supercharging before they can even break even with all the vehicles that are on the road that have free supercharging right now. Because right now, there are way more vehicles on the road that have free supercharging than ones that have paid supercharging. And a lot of the vehicles that do have paid supercharging are currently in a free trial. So even though paid supercharging was never meant to be a profit center, I think for now it's kind of operating as a loss center. And the only way paid supercharging is going to pay for the expansion of anything is by increasing the price. And the final cut they're making is to the referral program. Several times it's been on the verge of going away, only to be renewed with new prizes. The current program is supposed to end on March 11th, but it looks like it's going to end at the end of this month. So there are two ways to see this. One, the referral program has led to a lot of free advertising for Tesla. And the other way to look at it is when this current program is over, they will have given away almost 100 next-gen Founder Series Tesla Roadsters. So at $250,000 a piece, that's $25 million. But that $25 million, that's the price of the car, not necessarily how much it's costing Tesla. And I would like to know how many people are getting the Roadster with 0% off of the price. Because if they're going to be giving away nearly 100, it would be a shame if they had fewer than 100 actual paying customers. If you go on Tesla's website, the Founder Series Roadster is still available for order. And they're only making 1,000 of them. That tells me that including the 100 or so that they're giving away, they haven't sold a total of 1,000 Founder Series. But it doesn't surprise me that fewer than 1,000 people are putting $250,000 down to get a car that they're going to get at some uncertain point in the future. So if we say it's $25 million in advertising, what does that compare to with other companies? In 2017, Ford made $145 billion in revenue, and they spent $2.5 billion on ads, 1.7%. GM made $156 billion in revenue. They spent $3.1 billion on ads. That's 2%. Fiat Chrysler made $133 billion in revenue, and they spent $2.2 billion on ads, which is 1.6%. So if we try to project for 2018, they're probably going to have about $24 to $25 billion in revenue. So if they also are in the 1.5 to 2% spending on ads, then Tesla should be in the $400 to $500 million range on spending on ads. Just as a comparison to other companies, that's where they should be. So when you think about it that way, $25 million on Roadsters doesn't seem like that much. I believe the problem would come if people started to use the referrals to buy base Model 3s. If Tesla wants to sell the standard $35,000 Model 3 at a 15% margin, they would make $5,250 on each car. And that's the standard $35,000 version with no options. I think they're going to sell a lot of those $35,000 Model 3s with no options. They currently don't have many options to choose from, and the current mid-range Model 3 was about $37,000 when you include the full tax credit. And that version was readily available to anyone who wanted to purchase it at the end of last year in the US. So my thinking is anyone who isn't in on the $37,000 Model 3, once you include the federal tax credit, and it was a fairly well-loaded car, they probably won't be putting a lot of options in on the $35,000 version of that same car. And that being said, not everyone necessarily qualifies for the full tax credit, so it does make some sense for some people to wait for the $35,000 version. So at a 15% margin, they will make $5,250 on each car. But if a person purchased that car with a referral, the person whose referral they use, they would be getting $5,000 off a Roadster. So Tesla would effectively only be making $250 on that car if that Roadster is ever purchased. I think the referral program will come back, I think maybe with smaller prizes. They don't necessarily have to be giving away cars and power walls and even wheels. Like, I think maybe shirts and jackets and bags and things like that they used to give away will probably be more normal type prizes that they can do with the referral program. They could have made the discount on the Roadster 1% instead of 2%, making it twice as hard to win the Roadster. I think they may have underestimated the reach of some YouTubers, because a lot of people have won 2, and that's another thing. They didn't necessarily have to give 2 to anyone who got a certain amount of Roadsters. They could have definitely capped it at 1. Yeah, but it's definitely crunch time, and you can definitely tell that the $35,000 version of the Model 3 is getting closer and closer, as you can see that Tesla is looking at their numbers closer and closer, and they're making as much room as they can to get that car out. So let me know what you think in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe.